Okay, I'm gonna do a quick warm up before anyone comes on. I'm totally cold, haven't done any warm up yet for handstands or anything. Been sitting at my desk doing feedback for clients. Rosie's hair as usual. First handstand of the day is always interesting. Do a little bit of a test, see how the body feels. Moving the shoulders around. I haven't even done a wrist prep. So I'm using this as my wrist prep. So you can do this unless you're really struggle with mobility or your balance is all over the place. When we balance a lot, we have to use our wrists or compensate in our wrists a lot. So our wrists will feel it if our shoulders are forwards, if our hips are out of position. But as you get more and more comfortable in the handstand position, do it more and more often, and your mobility is more or less ready to go, you can get away with very quick warm-ups. And then just get into the calves and hamstrings. Again, really quick. So I'm not doing any crazy training today. I'm going to train a harder session tomorrow. I'm going to stick with more bent arm work today, but I will warm up a bit of press work because I'm bound to get some press handstand questions. Oh. So if anyone jumps on, you've got questions, handstands, calisthenics, anything like that, let me know. Press, handstand push up, balance, planche, levers, muscle ups, anything you're working on. So I'm trying to actively open up and stretch while in handstand as well, again for speed. So I'm a big fan of this one. I like this opening up the shoulders in this position, but just be careful that if you're super tight in the hip flexors or have a really bendy low back, this can dump into the low back. But because mine's all about my upper back and shoulders that's tight, that's where I feel it. As long as you keep pushing up and away, it's a pretty good opener. So shout if you've got any questions, start us off, give us something to work on. Should I train my conditioning exercises like rotator cuff elbow work before or after my main training? It depends. I'd probably put that after your strength stuff at the end, unless you feel like you need to warm it up. Normally, I do more mobility work at the start and then rotator cuff work at the end. But it depends whether you're doing like prehab or rehab. If you're doing rehab stuff for, like an injury or something, you might want to do it before and after and on your rest days. But if it's just prehab, I would just do it at the end. So I'm just making sure I've warmed everything up. So if anyone wants demos of stuff, I can do it. Cool. Let's warm up bent arm. So I'm just going to hang out at the bottom of the push up. So this is a really good one if you're not doing this one already. So just hanging out at the bottom of your dip or your push up position and moving around when you're there. So there's no contact with the floor, but just make sure that your chest is super close, your chin is super close. It also points out, like, a lot of people when they come down into a bottom of a push, their head comes really far forwards. So if you go to the bottom of that push up, you can really work on that, bringing the chin back. So bringing the head back into position while you're in a push position, especially. So a lot of people's pushes, we tend to take the head forwards at the same time. It dumps into the neck and creates issues. Okay, let's do see if my handstand push up is there. Gonna make sure I balance the handstand first. I'll just do a nice, slow, controlled one first. Check everything feels okay. Yeah, so handstand push-ups okay. Tried doing some handstand push-up work yesterday, and my shoulders and arms are really tired, so I struggled to do 1 or 2 reps. So any other questions? Anyone on live? Ask any questions, like any demos? Haven't really got a plan for today. Let's go. Let's do L-sit to shoulder stand. So big fan of doing these for all levels. So either on higher P-bars, IKEA steps, boxes. So making sure, obviously, you have a L-sit variation and then a shoulder stand variation. With the shoulder stand, just make sure, like, externally rotate a lot. You see, I just turned the P-bars in at the bottom and out at the end, just so it brings the arms into the torso. So I get some contact there. So like into that position. So I have really good contact, which makes the balance so much easier. See how the contact between the arms and the torso. And then from there, going into a transition. So from that shoulder stand, whether it's tuck or straight or in between, and then just roll around, hips come down, shoulders come up. So I recommend everyone plays with that. Okay, yeah. So kick up, consistency, and control is a massive one. So most of the people, when we're learners, we tend to go forwards in our kick up and not up to a handstand. So what we want to think about is creating a really strong base. So your shoulders, your head position, your focal point, and make that very consistent and very stable. So if I have my hands on the floor here, I've got my shoulders directly on top of my hands, and then I'm going to look down to the floor and I'm going to glue that in position so I don't move that in any way. So that's fixed. And then I'm just going to kick up a little bit and then come back down again. So what I'm trying to do there is I'm planting a really strong base, kicking the hips on top of the shoulders and then the feet on top of the hips, and then come back down again. So most people, when we kick up, is they start back, we start here, and then our energy goes in that direction. What we want to do is place everything down on top of the base and then push the floor away and try and kick up on top of that. Now, obviously, if you don't have great balance, it's not going to work freestanding yet. So use the wall, set up exactly the same. Focal point, keep looking down at that same spot, shoulders on top of the hands, and then kick and try and reach up tall. So lightly touching the wall, either 1 foot or 2 feet. And your line doesn't matter too much. Like if your mobility is not great, don't force yourself into a dead straight line. Just try and stack on top. So try and get energy going up to handstand, not over. So you're not plowing into the wall, because obviously then when we get rid of the wall, we're just going to go over onto our backs. So that's the biggest one with the kick ups, jumps, even presses. It's about going up to handstand, not over. That'll make a massive difference. Sir, please perform planche. I can do a tuck planche or open tuck position now. I won't go beyond that. My straddle planche is still not back to being great. I can hold for like 5 to 8 seconds with a half decent straddle position once I've warmed up, but I'm training planche tomorrow. But let's, if I do it on the P bars, I'll show you like what my cold planche levels like. I'm a big fan of also going from a lower position in the planche, whether it's L-sit, coming through and up into the planche. So again, it pushes you up in that direction and doesn't force you too far forwards. Everyone's really trying to go forwards in a planche, which is obviously the right thing to do, but we want to be pushing up into protraction and pushing up like that. So I'm pushing up. So it's all about going forwards in that direction. So I'm not going to do any long holds or hard positions today, just because I'm training it tomorrow. But if you've got any specific questions on planche, I'm not a planche expert, but I'm pretty confident that I can get most people to a tuck planche and like open tuck positions, what I think is really, really important for all the calisthenics skills, to have that as like a base. Okay, how to fix a banana when freestanding, it's hard to balance. Yeah, so same thing applies with the banana handstand. So if you have a banana position, it's probably there for a reason. So most people have a banana handstand because their reality is they can't actually do that. So they can't put their arms above their head. So they're stuck in this position. So when they try and put their arms above their head, their hips change their body's position and they're too tight. So one way is just to create a bit more space by taking the hands actually a bit wider, so not forcing yourself into go such a hard position. But if you have got the mobility and it's more of a balance thing, if you're in a banana type position, I'm just going to think about pushing up and reaching up. So don't do the corrections by lengthening up towards the sky and not forwards and backwards. So a lot of people think to correct posture, we've got to like throw the hips forwards or open the shoulders. Think about getting taller, and that will stack everything. That will put you into a stronger pelvic position. That will open your shoulders up more. I've been working on a handstand for 5 months now. I can open my shoulders, but I can't get my hip in the line with the shoulders. When I do, they fall over. Yeah, so I would do two things. I'd do what I just done there. So if you can hold a balanced handstand, then play around with just trying to lengthen and get taller in the position, and that will help correct things. But the other big one is just trying to get into a straight line on the wall as well. So if you're chest to wall positions, you can really focus on fine tuning posture and position without having to worry about balance. So if I'm here and I get my shoulders open, but my hips aren't in the right place, if I just think about lengthening and getting taller, and now I can squeeze everything and try and hold that position. And then in time, you'll be able to pull from the wall and reach up to that position as well. So trying to reach up as high as you can, but do longer holds against the wall to condition the position, and then any mobility away from the position. And then put the two together, and then have the balance as well, where you're trying to reach up to a straight handstand. Can free handstand near a wall? No, and I have safe in the case something bad happens. But when I'm in the middle of the room, I'm nervous. I'm not going to handstand anymore. Any tips to overcome fear? So what I would do with that is I'd make sure that you've got strength on both sides of the handstand. So working the heel pulls and the toe pulls against the wall. So making sure that you can move forwards and backwards. If you think about the same thing on our feet, we need to be able to go this direction, and we need to be able to go this direction and not fall down. Same thing in the handstand. I need to have control under balance, and I need to have control over balance when I'm leaning this way with weights and the fingertips. So to do that, if I go close to the wall and then I make my body one piece, push through the fingers, hold that position, and make sure that I can go between the wall and the handstand. That means I've got balance on the overbalance. And if I can do it this way around, like I just demoed with the posture position, and then be able to pull from the wall into handstand or between, so the underbalance and the handstand, then I know my window of balance is pretty good. And then it's just building confidence. So probably one of the best ways to do it is to get someone to spot you. So put a hand there, get them not to take that hand away, and then you kick up to their hand, and then slowly build the confidence to catch before and get them to move a little bit further away, but still be there as safety. Also practicing on grass or on sand or something, and kicking out, turning out of the handstand, and making sure you're comfortable to do that. And then just slowly kick up in the middle of the room, but also don't demand a dead straight position when you're in the middle of the room. Allow yourself to be a little bit bananaed, a bit more like this. Get your balance, and then once you've got your balance, you can push up a little bit taller. Don't be forcing yourself into that dead straight line, because you're more likely to fall over. Okay, what else have we got? Thank you for the super. I've been working on handstand for 5 months. Yep, that's the one. I do weighted calisthenics, but with what I've didn't increase my endurance. So should I do endurance training instead of weighted? I would do both. So I would do longer holds for things like handstand balance, statics. So like planches and levers and stuff, you'd probably want to keep those lower time. But in terms of statics, like longer L-sit positions, support positions, top of the chin up, bottom of the chin up, like holds there for like 20 or 30 seconds and fill any gaps. And then the same with your like handstand push-up positions and stuff. So you could hold the bottom of the handstand push-up for time, and then obviously doing long holds in your handstand holds. So it's probably the best way of doing it is to keep your body one segment, holding that one segment piece. If you can't do chest or handstand for anything more than 30 seconds, then do it on the floor as well in your normal hollow body positions, but then jump up into a chest or handstand as well. Or if you have it, go 30 seconds plus in a freestanding handstand. But I'd also keep doing weighted calisthenics, but you need to work out what your goals are. So a lot of people will get to a point with weighted calisthenics where it doesn't carry over anymore. And you'd be better off doing something that goes towards your goal, like the actual handstand push-up, instead of doing weighted dips and things like that. But it depends what your goals are. Awesome, great that you've been getting a lot of use out of the videos and stuff. And just make sure that you guys are doing send me any requests in comments or like on here and stuff for any future videos, because I'm trying to put content out on a daily basis. And if there's anything particular that you guys want to see, then let me know. Any tips for handstand push-up strength training? I'm looking to make a program for myself. Right now, I can do 10 pike push-ups with small feet raise. Like if you can do 10 pike push-ups, then I'll definitely be doing some eccentric push-ups. If you're after a freestanding handstand push-up, the slow eccentric is really good because it's going to teach you the pathway. But it depends on what sort of freestanding handstand you have already. So if I do a eccentric, it's teaching me the pathway for the handstand push-up, and it's conditioning through time under tension. So if I'm in this position, so I start my handstand, my shoulders come forwards, my feet come backwards, and then I slowly bend the elbows, and then see the time under tension. So I could hold or pause at any point, and then keep coming down to there. So I would definitely include some sort of eccentric like that with your pike push-up. So don't just think about repetitions for your handstand push-ups. Do the reps, but also do slow eccentrics. Ideally getting up to like 30 seconds time under tension per set. So if one of those takes you 10 seconds, it could be against the wall. So it could be here. And I could come down slowly through my eccentric there, hold at the bottom, and then come back out. But if that takes you 10 seconds, you could do 3 of those per set. So I'll be doing eccentrics plus some sort of concentric. So like you're doing already, if you can do 10 reps of pike push-ups, then you can start to do chest to wall push-ups. But if you really want a freestanding balance, you need to start working the freestanding balance as well. So think something for repetitions where you're getting the working sets, like 5 sets of 5, standard like strength sets and reps, but then also the balance skill, which the eccentric is good for, or the partial range. So using a block or something, coming down to a target. So if you have a target, and then the cool thing about this one is if you're doing the full range repetitions on the working sets, you can play with the balance and not have to worry about reps because the work's been done already. So create a triangle with the block up into handstand, and then kiss the target, come back again. And if that feels okay, flip the block over and try and do exactly the same thing. So that way you have a target to work to. It's progressive. You can assess it and you can find your gaps. But it all depends where your balance is and your strength is. When should someone start learning the back lever? I wouldn't necessarily do back lever holds. Instead, I would do planche leans. So if you're working planche leans already, then perfect, or some sort of planche work, because the planche work will strengthen your back lever. And then I would do a skin to cat. Skin to cat 360 pulls where you're passing through the back lever position. You're going down and doing your German hang and then pull back out again. Because that will carry over massively. Like I've got a full back lever for like 15, 20 seconds. But I've never really trained it. So I've never done sets and reps, but I've done lots of planche work, lots of planche leans, a lot of skin the cats. And I think that's the best way to do it. Back lever is like a freebie if you do everything else. Do you have any tips from going from tuck planche to open tuck planche? Just think of the difference between the two. So like a tight tuck planche position. So if I'm in a ball in a tuck planche, so if I'm in this position, like here, see my knees are inside my arms. And then when I move my legs to advanced tuck, the distance is massive. So that to that is massive. So don't go from there to there. Go like I can't see my knees. So now I can see my knees. So go like a tiny amount. Don't think to open up all the way. And think more protraction instead of more lean forwards. A lot of people, when they start moving away from the tuck planche, but they really start to lean forwards and start to lose all of their protraction. So think about pushing forwards. So if my tight tuck is here, and just go to like there and hold there. Don't try and go all the way out because that's too big a jump. And obviously planche is slow and just needs lots and lots and lots of repetitions and lots of sessions. So small increments. Hey, Paul, nothing specific to ask just now, but I thought I would just mention I've enjoyed your content over the last few weeks. Oh, cool. That's really good. Yeah, I picked up quite a few new people from the FAQ podcast. Daniel's cool. So thank you. Cheers from the rainy Gold Coast. Yes, it's stupidly hot and perfect. Actually, we've got a cooler day at the moment. It's a bit overcast. Actually, I don't think you'll see it's too bright. It's a bit overcast today, but we're like 40 degrees at the moment. It's stinking hot. That's why I'm dripping in sweat. My hair looks like that. Slow handstand push-up eccentric. Yeah, perfect. I think my strength at the bottom isn't there yet. Yeah, the bottom holds are really, really good for handstand push-ups because if you think it's like a squat, if you don't have the squat position at the bottom of the squat and you're squatting down with a heavy load, you expect your body to change direction and go back up again. It's the same in the handstand push-up. If you can't hold the bottom of a handstand push-up, how are you going to change direction and come back up again? So that bit's really, really important to understand. And both the balance aspect and just build the condition in the position. I do 20 minutes of mobility and flexibility. Then I do 30 minutes of handstand balance, which include handstand walks, holds, straddle to straight legs, kick ups. Is that enough for straight handstand? Yeah, it all depends what you have. So you can assess each of those things. So if you're doing that much work, like those different things, I wouldn't do walks. I'm not a big believer doing lots of handstand walks unless you're training specifically for like CrossFit or something like that. I would work on your balance window first. The walks will mess you up a little bit in terms of understanding your balance window. It's a bit like your average gymnast can't hold a handstand for that long because they don't train to hold a static handstand. So same with a CrossFit or something like that. I would initially start with more static holds and not do the walks and just go for like a straight handstand hold. A real good way of doing it is just accumulate a certain amount of time at the start of your handstand session as soon as you're warmed up. So whether that's 1 minute in a handstand, 2 minutes in a handstand, in a straight handstand, and just accumulate it with the goal of every session trying to reduce the sets. So if it takes you 2 sets to get 60 seconds, then the next time you do it, you try and do it in 1 set. If it takes you 5 sets to get 60 seconds, then obviously you got to try and decrease that every time. So if you're averaging like 20-second holds, if you can do like 40 or 50 seconds, accumulate 2 minutes. And if you can get up to the point where you can do 90 seconds to 2 minutes straight handstand whenever you want to, then I wouldn't overly train it. I'd just check you can do it. Like I know I can hold like 2.5 minute straight handstand whenever I want to, but I don't train it now just for all the other time I spend on my hands. So it's really hard to answer programming questions without assessing where you're at. Would I ever come to Sydney and do classes in person? I've had a few requests to come on the East Coast. I mean, there's some really good practitioners on the East Coast as well. It's just a time thing with the family and stuff. I'm not traveling that much at the moment, but I've had a few requests in different places. So at some point I will. And if it coincides with a trip or something, I would definitely do a workshop wherever I go. Like when I went to the UK this year, I've done workshops there. What is the minimum requirements to start learning skills in calisthenics? I mean, repetitions. It depends on the skill and the quality of it. So, like if you looked at like a ring muscle up, most people would say you need 5 dips or 10 dips, 5 to 10 chin ups. But it's the technique and the quality of that. So if you're doing a muscle up and you're doing your pull ups to here, and you can rep up and down there for 20 reps, that's not as good as 5 reps where you come to there. Because when we come to there from the muscle up, we can then transition. But here we can't transition and we'll chicken wing over the top. So it's not just repetitions, it's technique. If you can do slow, controlled repetitions of a skill, that means you're good enough to go to the next progression. Normally, I'd say like haven't been able to talk while you do something is really a demonstration that you've got good control throughout the range of motion, and just make sure you're hitting the prerequisites for the skill that you're trying to do. So like the muscle up's a good example. Handstand push up's a good example, making sure that you can go, if you're doing pike push ups, but your head isn't touching the floor, or you're not opening up fully at the top into a straight position, we need to make sure that you're doing those clean reps through the full range of motion as a priority. I want to master the over falling window first. When my legs come over my head, I press hard into the floor, but it still fall over. I'm having no problem with the wrist. I train them separately, and tips for overfall. So basically, it's the same on our feet. We have a lot bigger underbalance than we have overbalance. So when I'm in a handstand, look at the range I can go on my underbalance compared to my overbalance. So with my underbalance, I can keep going this way. Look, and I don't fall down. And I can play around there, and it's nice. And you can see that I'm hanging out in that underbalance. But when I go to my overbalance, it's literally just there. Now I'm pushing into my fingers. So if you're going towards your overbalance all the time, that's either telling us that you're kicking up in that direction. So you're kicking up there instead of going up to handstand. And also you're probably balancing here more, where we want to balance here more. So slightly underbalanced is going to be much better for you than slightly overbalanced. Slightly overbalanced means that you're going to be right on the edge of the cliff all the time and nearly falling. Where if I kick up constantly to here, which is slightly underbalanced, I can move through this range and not fall. But if I try to do that with my overbalance, I would be falling over every time. And I've got like a 2-minute handstand comfortable. So think about going more towards your slight underbalance and not your slight overbalance, because you've got way more room for error. And just using those heel pulls and toe pulls drills is the best way to do that. The back to wall and the chest to wall drills, like making sure your distance, so you can put a marker down. So like if I put my coffee cup where my hand is here, and I put my fingers in line with that, and I kick up to the wall, I want to see, can I pull myself from the wall to the handstand? Can I go back with control slowly? So that tells me that I have 1, 2 hand spaces, and I have that much control of my overbalance. I could then keep going and taking the cup further and further away, but most people are going to be super close to there. So you can measure it, you can assess it, and then you could build repetitions by going further and further away from the wall. With the hands, just make sure that you're pulling from the wall and you're not kicking off the wall. Hey, how you doing? Greetings from Romania. That's cool. Thank you for your support. Any other questions, guys? I'm keeping on top of them so far. Did I miss any? If I missed anyone, just give me a shout. Underbalance is basically planche territory. Yes. I mean, I exaggerate positions. So when I exaggerate the position for the underbalance, like if I show you how most people's underbalance looks, it doesn't look like, I can take mine that looks more like a planche position, but like this is underbalanced. this is underbalanced. So that's realistic to what most people should be able to do. So go from handstand to underbalance. This is like planchy. But this, everyone should learn that if they want to have a consistent handstand that's usable for press handstand, for handstand push-ups, for anything you want to do. Best wrist mobility exercise. The best wrist mobility exercise is the handstand itself. So I would do very limited wrist prep in terms of different exercises. You'll see lots of people will train hundreds of different exercises to warm up their wrists. I literally do this in every handstand class. If you've ever been to my handstand classes or done any of my workshops, this is my handstand prep. I place hands on the floor and I do circles. Slowly make the circle bigger and bigger until it's happy, till that feels okay in both directions. And then I peel up and down through the fingers, through the knuckles, through the palms in different directions. And as soon as my wrists feel okay and I can put weight into them, then I'm doing handstands. But the other big thing to think about with wrist mobility, when you get pain or discomfort in your wrist, a lot of the time it's because of your lack of mobility in the rest of the body. So your shoulders, your back, your hips, is your wrists are taking the load for those being in a bad position. Also, if your balance isn't great, you're forcing yourself to go forwards and backwards all the time. So if I just stand here, my ankles are fine. But if I done this all the time, I can feel my ankles now. So my ankles are going to get sore if I do that for repetition. It's exactly the same for your wrists. If your handstand is wobbling all over the place, you're going to feel your wrists way more. So I would make sure that you're doing handstand balance work, conditioning work on your hands, but when you're static. So chest to wall handstand holds as part of your warm up is fantastic because it's going to warm up in a really good position and it's just going to slowly condition the strength of your wrists. And also going a little bit wider with your hands. If your mobility is not great, don't try and handstand here yet. Try and take the hands wider. It just creates more space and gives your body a little bit more of an out. So there's not so much tension in the system. Underbalance drills, the number one underbalance drill in my eyes is the toe pull. As long as you can comfortably do a toe pull. So it's chest to wall. It's keeping the legs together and as one piece or one segment with the shoulders. So everything's squeezed together. And then I'm going to slowly take the shoulders forwards until my toes come off the wall. I should ideally be able to hold there, open to handstand, and go back for repetitions. So that's the goal. Once you can do reps, it's holds. So pulling away from the wall and holding for time. Now, if you're worried about doing it that way, ideally have someone here to stop you. And then you can pull away from the wall and you'll just come to their hands. They can push you back. Make sure that you're coming off the wall and pushing up to handstand and not just going in that direction. We want to make sure they're going to handstand and back again. And if that's really scary and you're not comfortable to do it chest to wall yet, do it back to wall. And then when you come too far in the handstand, take your shoulders forwards and bring yourself back to the wall. That's just much harder to do and coordinate, especially when you're first starting. So I would ideally do the chest to wall version, pull down, up to handstand, pull down, up to handstand. And ideally train with someone who's also working the same skill and understands the movement. It's much easier to train with someone, they're giving you feedback in the moment as opposed to just doing it by yourself and not knowing what's happening. And if you are by yourself, video yourself from the side and self-assess your position in between your sets. So do a few sets, have a stretch while you're stretching, watch your footage back, and then look at what your body's doing and self-assess and self-coach yourself and work out on the shoulders, the feet, the hips, the not pushing up to handstand, whatever it is, and then try and fix it on the next set. Hey, Paul, what determines your set rep structure for any given workout for skills, i.e. planche, front lever, etc.? Time under tension is the big one, because it is a bit complicated with bodyweight strength training, because it's not as simple as going repetitions, because you can have a repetition that has a really slow tempo or a fast tempo or a slow tempo for half the movement and then it drops through the other half. So we want to be thinking about slow controlled repetitions, roughly working on 30 seconds per set. So, you know, if you're doing a 10-second repetition, you only have to do 3 reps. If you're doing 5 seconds, you'll have to do 6 reps. So that type of thing with movements that make sense with that. With the planches and levers, it's a similar idea. So either longer holds for less sets. So like a beginner might be doing 10 to 15 second holds for 3 sets. So the accumulative time isn't that long, but they obviously just condition their body to a planche. And then I would do planche leans or something like that with that as well, where you might do longer holds, but it's a much easier position. And then you would start to make it harder by putting more and more volume in, but normally you would drop the time. So you go to like 6 to 8 seconds for planche and lever, but then you would have to increase the sets to get enough volume. So someone with 6 to 8 seconds in their planche and front lever might be doing 12 sets or 10 sets or something like that. But it all depends on the individual in terms of slowly increasing the volume and the intensity at the right amount, so you keep progressing. So it's a bit challenging because there's not a right or a wrong way, because everyone's different in terms of how much intensity. Like I can do a planche, I can do a tuck planche next to someone else who's doing a tuck planche, and their intensity is 7, my intensity is 10. So it's really hard to determine that. So normally what I do with planche and lever is I set the times. So I would say, I want you to do 8-second holds and then hold the best possible position you can do for that. So on their first set, they might be in a tuck planche. In the second one, they might be in an open tuck. Then they might be in a straddle planche. And then as they get tired, they might have to pull back to an easier position because I still want them to hold the time. So it's really tricky to get the time sets, reps correct. And in a lot of ways, I wouldn't overly worry about it. I'd use them as a guide, but just go on your progressions. So, or how quick you're progressing. So if you're not making any progress with a skill, you're either not doing enough work, which is normally the case, not consistent enough with the training, or you're doing way too much, which is not that often. Normally the issue is not enough or too much. So someone will train for like 2 hours and then they won't train again for 8 days. And then they'll do another 2-hour session. So they're doing way too much in one session and not spreading it out. So, and especially when a lot of these skills, require a mix of balance, mobility, strength. So I've sort of answered that, but not answered that. I hope that makes sense. Yeah, I try and do the lives as much as possible because it is useful. I keep meaning to schedule them. It's just really tricky with my weekly routine at the moment in terms of scheduling ahead, because I want to sort of ideally do some of these where you guys send some videos in. So like what I do with my online clients. So they'll send me videos. I'll video me talking about what they're actually doing and then send the video back to them so they can get sort of like a live, even though it's not live, recap or feedback or critique of their work. So what I was thinking of doing was for some of these lives was getting you guys to send me some of your videos before I do it. And then I can use your video on the screen, talk about it and show things in the same time. But it's just the logistics of doing all that. Elbow lever, please. So in terms of elbow lever, are you talking single arm elbow lever, double arm elbow lever, like a peacock, bent arm, double arm elbow lever? Elbow lever is probably the easiest balance skill to learn and probably the most impressive when you're in a crowd of people that don't do this training. So it's a bit of a funny one. The best thing you can do for elbow levers is have an elevated surface because it makes it much easier to create space. So if I bring my elbows in, so I'll show you both double arm and single arm. So double arm, everyone could do, like all of you could do this right now. So you're just going to externally rotate if I've got something like this, I'm going to place my hands on the outside like that. See how close my elbows are. Excuse me. And then I'm going to bring my elbows together into my hips. So then I'm in that position, and now I've lifted up. So that's really easy to do. You can do it really slowly. Don't jump into it. Find your balance position, and then you can just start to open out. But as you open out, you want to extend. So your head and shoulders want to go forwards, your feet want to go backwards. So you're opening out as much as you can, but it makes sense. So you don't want to open out the back and not the front. You want to open out at the same time. The single arm elbow lever in some ways is easier because it creates even more space. So I'm going to put one hand on here. Don't rush to lift this hand up. So a lot of people rush to lift this hand up. I'm going to bring the elbow in towards the midline as much as I can. So into here to the stomach. I'm going to lay on the stomach, hand here, lift the hips up, and then just open the chest and shoulders. And then you can start to reduce that finger and eventually lift up. So the elbow lever is a pretty quick skill to get, especially the double one. I often teach that in like a handstand class. A majority of people will get the double arm one. How do I kick up every time, and how can I master balance in handstand? So big question, lots of information to go over for that. At the start of the session, I showed someone how to do consistent kick ups. So it's all about creating a strong base. So hands, shoulders, focal points, stacking all those things on top. So if I'm going to do a kick up consistently, my base, my hands, my shoulders on top of my hands, my focal point, all that needs to be exactly the same all the time. Then when I kick up, I'm kicking the hips and feet on top, coming back down. Notice how the base doesn't change. That's the biggest thing. With the balance, we want to be doing heel pulls, legs squeezed together, push through the fingers, reach up to handstand, go back again. That's going to train your overbalance. Turn around, do the toe pulls. Once you feel comfortable enough to do this, take the shoulders away, reach up to the sky, come back again for repetitions. That's going to balance either side of the handstand. So that was like how to handstand, how to kick up in about 30 seconds. Realistically, it's going to take you, 6 months to get to the point where you can do those comfortably-ish. It depends on the individual. And then 6 months to 18 months to balance a handstand for 10 seconds. It all depends on the individual. Can you L-sit? Yeah, L-sit again is a real basic movement that everyone can do. Just think of your progressions with the L-sit. So you've got elevated surface, get 2 chairs, don't have to be P-bars, and just learn the support position. So arms into the side, knees to chest, and then progress by straightening the legs. Make it harder by reducing the height of the hands. What do you recommend as hip flexor exercises that train raising the legs from the floor while doing the press? I like doing toes to bar, supersetted with press work, works well. But it's one of those things where like understanding what happens to the hip flexors in the press handstand is actually more extension, not flexion. So you're not actually bringing your legs to you. You are to the point before you actually press, but when you press, you're actually standing up. So it's a bit like a deadlift. So when I do a deadlift, I've got my hands holding something here, and then I lift up with the posterior muscles. So the hamstrings and the butt pull my torso up, and I stand up with my arms. So I don't actually use the muscles that close the body. It's exactly the same with the press. I need those muscles to do stuff now because they're bringing the legs in. But as soon as I'm in the right spot here, my legs open out. So I'm going up. So it's actually extension, not flexion. It's useful to have good hip flexors from a closing the hip point of view. And you can do exercises like that are more press specific, where I'll be back in this position and I'll come forwards, hold that position and come forwards, like the straddle hops, that type of thing. And there's definitely some contraction and work being done with the hip flexors there, but it's not pressing you up in the air. More of that is more the upper back and shoulders. So for press specific, I would be doing slow eccentrics. So handstand, lowering down as slow as possible. And then the wall eccentrics, putting you back against the wall, which you'd know those ones from my other handstand press videos. It is, press handstand is one of those exercises that you'll never understand it until you can do it. And then once you can do it, you won't be able to explain it to anybody else. It's like a weird movement that's hard to explain. Like everyone understands a chin up in terms of what muscles are used, and it's easy to explain it, but press handstand is super confusing. It's just doing the exercises, trusting the eccentrics, the partial range, and the wall drills. One arm handstand, please. My one arm handstand is so dusty and rusty. You'll be lucky if you get a 5-second hold, unless I really warm it up. And I'll show you my good side only. So elbow in to the midline there. See, I've noticed I've stopped talking. Yep, that was surprisingly okay considering I'm not warmed up. But that's a one-arm handstand. Obviously, I can't cover a one-arm handstand here. Now, if you are got it on the goal list, a one-arm handstand, your two-arm handstand just needs to be super strong. Do tucks, do straddles, move around, work on your splits. The more you get into your middle splits, the easier the one-arm handstand is. I'm currently working towards freestanding handstand push-up, planche, front back lever, muscle-ups, handstand skills, over 7 to 8 days split. Is this too much at once? No and yes. It's like really hard to answer that in detail, because you can work all those things at once, but you need to get pretty clever with how you do it, because you don't want to be doubling up. So if you've done a separate exercise for all of those skills, you're probably spreading yourself too thinly. But if you looked at things like, I would stop training back lever. I would nearly stop doing front lever as well. I would do like skin the cat instead. If you do a slow skin the cat, that covers both of those movements. It depends where the muscle up is, like whether you're breaking it down into training dips by themselves, false grip rows, transitions, false grip chins, yo-yos. Like the muscle up itself could be a full day, or it could literally be one exercise. So it depends on what level you are on all these things. But like I train all of those things, but I can do a freestanding handstand push-up. So my training of a freestanding handstand push-up is just doing repetitions, or I'll do deficit, or I do 90-degree handstand push-ups. So I can do the things. So it's easier for me to put them into a program because I only need the one exercise. But if you're breaking each of those down into 5 exercises, your exercise list is going to be so massive that you're spreading yourself too thinly. So if you put everything down on paper and then go, okay, which of these exercises are actually doubling up? Like if you're doing lots of planche work, you don't need to do back lever. The planche and the back lever are so similar, and the planche is the one to train because that will give you the other things. Like if you get a good planche and a handstand push-up, you'll be able to press handstand. So there's other things that you'll get for free, and it's just understanding how to put that together. So it's like impossible for me to answer that in detail. So that's why I said yes and no. Show your one arm elbow lever to handstand. Geez, you're throwing out the challenges. I can only do it going through a handstand push-up. So I'm doing this as my training session, so I will do it, but it's not going to be that pretty. So one arm elbow lever, I can only do it if I come from here and then transition and push up to handstand that way. So it's not like a pop to handstand, but it's, if you've got a decent handstand push up, you can do that. That's not that hard, especially if you learn to use that momentum of going up. What is the best hamstring flexibility exercise? Again, depends on your level. A Jefferson curl is amazing because it gets your spine as well. So Jefferson curl, if you're not doing them, you bend your knees at the start, chin to chest, roll down through the spine. So I'm working on spinal articulation, learning to roll through the spine. Then I lock the knees backwards, and then I go as deep as I can into a forward fold. So there, being raised up is really good. So I'm trying to lengthen as much as I can. I know I can always just touch the floor, and if I warm up, I can get a little bit deeper. If I can't touch the floor, I need to do a bit of a stretch. But so that's a good forward fold position, and then I roll back up. But the person that has a very, very tight hamstrings and calves, that Jefferson curl is probably not the best one. You're probably better off doing a single leg hamstring stretch. So just coming down into a lunge position, single leg in front, hands here, hands there. This is the one that I'll tend to do in a handstand class as well, because every level can do it. Like the beginner is there, the more advanced is there, or holding onto the foot. And I would just spend time in a hamstring stretch daily. And there's lots of other ones. There's the forward fold positions. There's pike. There's lots of different hamstring stretches. Just pick the one that fits your body at the moment, as long as you're feeling it in the calves and hamstrings, and then do it consistently, like every day. Just spend some time in the position, and then whenever you're warming up before you're training. How to fix elbow pain after ring muscle up? It's most people get elbow pain in the ring work if they're doing lots of movements that are flexion and extension. So if you're doing like handstand push-ups, handstands, and then doing muscle up work, or if your volume is just too much across the line, also increasing mobility. So not putting too much demand on the elbows. It's a bit like having wrist pain in the handstands, making sure that you have more mobility in the shoulders and in the thoracic. Like thoracic with the muscle up is massive. So being able to like snake around and move your spine correctly around the rings makes it much easier and less clunky, because when it's clunky, your elbows will take the stress or your wrists will take the stress. So creating more space, and also like doing forearm release work. So making sure you're releasing through your forearms, external rotation work. So your rotator cuff work to create more space, and just play with your volume. Unfortunately, with ring training, elbow pain, it sort of goes hand in hand. I've definitely had it, and it definitely comes back when I up the ring training. So yeah, it's a tricky one, and you need to just have a look at your overall volume and like get assessed by a physio that likes training, not a physio that doesn't like training. So that's a good, it's a challenge sometimes, but if you can find someone that can give you rehab exercises, can give you like a good massage around the elbow and the forearms and shoulder and stuff, who's not going to say don't train, that's good if you can find someone. Front lever pull up, please. I can't really do full front lever pull-ups. I can do a front lever pull. So just taking the body up is a bit dodgy on this setup here. You can go over the top of Rosie. So I would train this one more than the front lever pull-up, like bending the arms. I would just pass through front lever there. If you've got a higher position, like higher ceiling, you can go straight legs at the top. And a good goal is to be able to hold in that position with straight legs. I can't straighten because of the ceiling with an open hip. That's a good test to be able to go up and down there. But again, I wouldn't overly train those. I would do skin the cat, because the skin the cat is a front lever pull to a back lever to a German hang and back out. So it's another one of those exercises that covers so many different things at once. Does weighted chins, pull-ups, dips have any crossover to skill work in your opinion? Yeah, definitely. You want to make sure that you don't have any gaps. So if you're trying to get skills that require strength through those ranges, you need to have them. But one of the biggest mistakes people make, I think, especially if they're into calisthenics, getting into some of the skill work as well, is it's tricky to know how to balance like weighted dips, weighted chins with the calisthenics bodyweight skills. Because what you end up doing is you sort of go down there, I must put more and more kilos on the dips, but then you can't do handstand push-ups because you're not doing the skill of the handstand push-up. You're spending too much time on the dips. You'll see a lot of people doing that with pike push-ups as well. There's like a thing at the moment with pike push-ups where they were loading themselves with lots of extra weight and doing pike push-ups, but they're not training eccentric handstand push-ups. So if you are doing weighted stuff, I'd make sure that you're also doing skill work, and you might run into an issue where you just can't juggle it. It's too much. So I'd recommend that you have a look at everything and then work out where your gaps are and then fill it with the basic strength exercises. And then get clear on what your skills are that you're aiming for. I think I've caught up. Any other questions, guys? So I've allowed myself an hour, so we've got 5 more minutes. I need to do some sort of training video today for my Instagram. Got to decide what to do. Anyone else have questions? How do I keep motivated with my training? I love it. And I also ride the wave of what I'm into. So like, I don't know, 4 or 5 years ago, it was all about the one arm handstand. Everything I'd done was one arm handstand. Every day I would be training one arm handstand. And recently it's been more, I just want to get super strong at handstand push ups, planches, and press handstand, and just be able to do them really efficiently and teach them really well. So I just ride the edge of what I'm doing all the time in terms of what I'm enjoying. And then I love the videoing and the video editing and the YouTube side. So I think if I wasn't a coach and I wasn't doing this type of training, I would be doing something else in the like creative side. Like my son's a videographer, like I would definitely be doing something like that. So combining that, so like whenever I train, I video, I edit, I put it up, and obviously that helps my business from a coaching point of view, but it's just my passion as well. So I love it. I definitely wouldn't have the skills I have now and be able to do them if I didn't love it. It's definitely not a easy thing to do, especially to become a coach and be able to support a family and stuff. It's hard to make money with this type of stuff, so you got to love it, and you've got to walk the walk as well. So yeah, I just really enjoy it. Okay, 3 minutes, guys, and then I'm going to switch off. Stick any other questions down. Rosie's had enough. Can I talk about my experience with Ido? Yeah, Ido was awesome. Like he was the reason that I started one arm handstands. Before I'd ever met him, I saw a picture of him in a one arm handstand, and I was like, I want to do that. I've got to learn how to do that. And it just so happens that like a month later, he was coming to Perth to do a workshop. So I signed up for his workshop, and then from there on, I then went to the signed on with online coaching with him, and he opened my eyes up. Like at that workshop, I knew what a ring muscle up was, but I didn't know like really knew about freestanding handstand push ups and presses and the calisthenics world. From that, I used to think calisthenics was all just bars. So he opened my eyes up to like that way of training, and then the whole learning how to do all those things from the online coaching then opened my eyes up to suddenly start researching loads of other things. And that was one of the things that he didn't like so much, because he wanted me to only do it his way, or he wants his students to do it that way, not just me, everyone. He wants to do it his way and not look at anyone else's coaching. So that's where when I decided to leave his coaching, because I wanted to explore other things. Like he didn't want me to chase the one arm handstand so much, but I wanted to. So that's where I left Ido and went to Yuval. But the time I spent with Ido was amazing. Like I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for his coaching and his what he done to the movement calisthenics world to allow me to see the potential in it. And it's become way more mainstream now, and his name is sort of lost a little bit, because you'll talk to some people and they've never heard of him, but there was like gymnastic bodies and all that sort of thing doing it before him. But I think he just put a spotlight on it. So yeah, I look back with fond memories. There's a few things that I didn't agree with his coaching, but yeah, he's an interesting guy. Okay, 15 seconds, guys. I'm gonna sign off. Have an awesome day, awesome weekend, wherever you are, whatever you're doing. I'm going to try and do this every Friday. I just can't guarantee the time. Once I get a bit more sorted, I will put them up. But if you've got any questions or anything you want me to cover on any of these, just send me a message, DM me on Instagram, or put a comment on YouTube. If I never reply to anything, just resend it, highlight it again. It can get lost some days, especially on Instagram. We just get flooded with messages sometimes. All right, cheers, guys. I'm going to sign off. Speak to you soon. Show you Rosie.